I shouldn't come up here and tell you guys that, hey, I'm going to do a Q&A before Survivor Series, because clearly that's not what happens. Let's find out what you guys asked the Phoenix. For the last time this year, what's going on, everybody? It's your buddy, it's Spaz Phoenix, the YWC Reality Check, and this is the November, I guess, post-Survivor Series edition of Ask the Phoenix. Anybody watching for the first time, throw your questions down in the box below. They will be included in my next Q&A, which will be sometime around the Royal Rumble next year. You guys know I take December off, and there's no Big Four pay-per-view in December. Anyways, I do want to put a quick question out to you guys, seeing as I'm about to answer a bunch from you guys. How do you like this series to be better? Because I used to do this every month, and then it was every other month, so that we had 6 a year, and now I just attach them to the Big Four pay-per-views, rather roughly, as you can see this weekend. I'm really starting to wonder, because I might do more, I might do less, I might go down to the every other month thing, which would end it in November, like this one is. I might stay with the attaching it to a Big Four or Big Five pay-per-view if they decide to keep making Money in the Bank a Big Five pay-per-view. So I'd like to know in the box below what you guys would prefer. It would be, you know, feedback and all that. I mean, I'm doing this for you guys, so obviously you guys telling me what you want to see is going to be a big help. As I say, if it's your first time checking out one of these videos, put your comments down in the box below if you want your questions read in the next video. I do want to say, over the course of the year, thank you to all the usual suspects. You know who you are. Zohan is dominating this particular Q&A, so a particular shout out to him. The other ones, you know who you are, the ones that take part also in the pay-per-view pick 'em, as well as this, as well as just keeping in conversation with me in general over the year. You guys are all great, wonderful. Those of you in America, I hope you had a great Thanksgiving weekend, Black Friday, all that kind of thing. I really want to put the joke out there that all Fridays matter, but you know, that might get me a little slap on the hand and might reinforce the wrong rumors that people have put out there about me, but it's still funny as fuck, so what the fuck ever. All Fridays matter. Yeah, I don't know. Quick note, I guess I should say, coming up over the course of December, I may or may not do a pay-per-view pick'em for TLC. As I say, I usually don't do much in December. I sort of my mini sabbatical at the end of the year. I do have 1 or 2 topical ideas that I might get Kristen and Jordan on board for, and we'll see how that goes. But through the course of December, you won't be getting the NXT UK reviews, etc. So very, very, very far in advance. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, all that kind of shit. Might as well get into the questions, because I'm just rambling now. Kobalali Crew, I really hope I'm pronouncing that properly. Hello, are you looking forward to Charlotte versus Ronda at Mania? Well, with no offense, it's sort of an outdated question now, because we got Charlotte versus Ronda at Survivor Series. I really hope we're not getting it again at WrestleMania, because, you know, Nia Jax is a fucking moron and cost us Becky Lynch versus Ronda Rousey. I hope that is the one-on-one match we get at WrestleMania. I hope that is the match that gets to be the first ever, you know, women main eventing at a WrestleMania. Women main eventing at a WrestleMania, if you just throw a bunch of people in the match, isn't gonna mean anything. Like, the guys had, you know, your Rock Austin one-on-one main events, etc., etc. I mean, your Roman, Triple H, and Lesnar versus whoever, versus whoever, versus whoever. I think, and you guys might disagree with me, put it down in the box below if you do, I think if they're going to play up the historical aspect of the first ever women's main event at WrestleMania, it has to be a one-on-one match. So people out there that are trying to work out sort of a compromise that it's going to be, you know, Ronda versus Charlotte versus Becky, that doesn't really work, in my opinion, considering right now, as it stands, you got 2 titles in that match as well, which is odd. And I mean, Charlotte could go and have Charlotte Asuka too, and that wouldn't hurt my feelings at all, but I'm sorry, that's not a main event for WrestleMania. It's just not. Anyways, now, thank you for that, Kolabali Crew, and please, please, please correct my pronunciation down in the box below, because I really don't like mispronouncing people's names, even if it's just a screen name. The Zohan, which is very easy to pronounce, has killed me with questions. Which tag team was more deserving of a tag team title run, Crime Time or Enzo and Cass? Here's the thing. Enzo and Cass and Crime Time are 2 great examples of the template that wrestling uses, where we're going to have one really fast, really entertaining, really high-octane main star, and a big guy to back him up. They had Shawn Michaels and Diesel, and they kept on trying to recreate it after that. LAX in TNA is another great example of that. I don't think Crime Time as a team would have done like they were a great entertaining team, and I loved it. The whole thing where they brought Lita's suitcases out and started throwing her underwear out in the crowd, that was amazing. Enzo and Cass, you know, Enzo was falsely fired from WWE for false accusations from some bitch down in Phoenix. Haha, pun intended. So he should still be there now, in my opinion. Like, he got royally fucked in the ass, no lube, by that entire situation. Cass is kind of useless. Anybody that's seen him on the indies now is doing what indie stars do. They used to work for WWE, so they rant on WWE, and everybody in the crowd goes, ooh, ah, and that's about it. My answer to this, and it's not one you're going to like, take JTG and Enzo Amore, make them the current tag team champions. And there we go. Next question, what are your thoughts on Alberto Del Rio? Do you think the WWE regards him as a failed investment, as Royal Rumble win, Money in the Bank contract holder, multiple-time world champion? I don't think he is a failure, because I think if you put the things that he's done outside of the WWE, the things we found out about him being like an absolute asshole, the whole issues with Paige, etc., he was a good wrestler to watch in the ring. I enjoyed him. I enjoyed him when he stepped in for a Destiny show that I was at, even though he was introduced as Alberto El Patron and he still had the ADR wrestling gear. When they had him as the world champion, he was a world champion at a time where there just happened to be much bigger stars in the top echelon of the company. He could have been, like, if it was a lull period, he could have been the main guy. Weirdly enough, I say this, I would have loved to see him enter through NXT first, because I think he could have been a lot of fun to watch on NXT, and especially with somebody like Andrade Cien Almas, who we have in there now, I would have loved to see them fight at least once, but that's just me. The guy's a dick. The guy's done a lot of things after the fact to make the company look really, really bad, so I'm sure WWE sees him as a failure, sees him as a bad, failed investment, however you want to say it. As a fan, I watched an Alberto Del Rio match to see that it was good, and they usually were. So it didn't. It's not a failure to me as a fan, but that's not really your question. How do you think about WWE incorporating the bragging rights concept into the Survivor Series pay-per-view, or should Survivor Series feature brand-exclusive matches, storylines, including the bragging rights as a yearly schedule, as a separate part of the pay-per-view? I like the bragging rights concept if you're going to make it feel real. And that's a really bad thing to say. Right now, the 5-on-5 matches, the 10-on-10 with the tag team thing that we saw this year, were a lot of fun, and there was a reason for the match to happen. They were working towards, you know, the brand supremacy, that whole bit. Original Survivor Series is always fun. I mean, it's been various over the years. They've gone, like, you know, 10-on-10, 4-on... I looked the 4-on-4 ones, like, way, way, way back in the day, because usually it was just 2 tag teams versus 2 tag teams, so it was a lot of tag team psychology. Nowadays, you have 5 singles wrestlers going up against 5 singles wrestlers and trying to have tag team continuity, so there's not really anything for them to fight for. Bringing this to Survivor Series means that, you know, the Survivor Series matches themselves have a reason to happen. As far as the bragging rights pay-per-view goes, I would like to see them do something with that, but I would like to see that brought down to the NXT level. NXT has their own, you know, I guess, signature pay-per-view right now. We just saw WarGames. It's really good. A lot of people are really up in the air on the concept of the match itself, but I do really like it. If they could elevate the NXT UK brand, which, I mean, it won't be a problem because it's already fucking fantastic. I would love to see NXT versus NXT UK in a takeover bragging rights pay-per-view. That's what they should do with that. But as far as the Survivor Series, leave it as it is. I mean, they've done other funky things with Survivor Series in the past. Who remembers the Deadly Games tournament? Yeah, leave it how it is for now. If they get rid of the brand split, obviously they'll go back to what it was before. But I mean, if they get rid of the brand split, there's a whole lot more concerns than just that to worry about. Which squash match was more detrimental to each wrestler's respective credibility? Sami Zayn, who was squashed by Bobby Lashley at Money in the Bank 2018, or Kevin Owens, who was squashed by Braun Strowman at SummerSlam 2018? I'm going to say the Kevin Owens one. They were both terrible. The Bobby Lashley, Sami Zayn thing, you know, he's running the obstacle course, he was questioning his military history, which is just, it's just buzzwords and, again, things to make people go ooh and ah. But Sami Zayn versus Bobby Lashley, that's what they were doing that night. That was their match for the night. Kevin Owens getting squashed by Braun Strowman was an afterthought later on that night so that Braun Strowman could go and deal with what he was actually really doing of importance that night. So Sami Zayn was squashed, and that was just the end of the story. Kevin Owens was squashed on the way to a bigger story, leaving Kevin Owens very, very much in the background. So I think that buried him a little more, though Kevin Owens has a lot more credibility to begin with. So I think at the end of the day, or by the end of 2018, especially now, because they're both injured, which sucks, I think those guys are actually pretty much on an even keel as far as their credibility with the fans. Do you believe it would be a good idea to begin the initial brand split right from the inception of SmackDown in 1999 instead of doing it in 2002? No, because nobody had any attachment to the SmackDown show. Everybody was attached to Raw, and I think you would have developed the mentality that, okay, we've got way too many people on Raw, so we just scrape off the excess onto this new show. I don't think that would lend much credibility whatsoever to the SmackDown brand. Now, that being said, they've always made Raw a bigger deal than SmackDown. Raw is now 3 hours. Take that as you will. I mean, most people hate the fact that it's 3 hours, but very much so when the original brand split happened, a lot of people I know, and I sort of went with it as well, thought that in WWE's mind, Raw was WWE and SmackDown was their WCW, so they were never going to let it be on even keel. And I don't think it's on even keel now. It's overexposed on Monday, and you get a lot better wrestling on Tuesday, and that's always been the case. You know, pretty much nobody wants anybody to come up from NXT right now because NXT is where all the good shit's happening. But you hear a lot of people say, you know, Aleister Black's coming up soon, or apparently EC3 was supposed to come up a while ago, except for his concussion, and then you've got a guy like Velveteen Dream, and it's like, leave them in NXT, but if they do come up to the main roster, put them on SmackDown, because Raw will ruin them. I will say, though, in one argument to that point, Braun Strowman was a rosebud in NXT, and he's been in the title situation on Raw. So there's your one example. Baron Corbin was kind of meh on NXT, in my personal opinion, and he's found himself a foothold. It's not a foothold that everybody likes, but he's found himself a solid foothold on Raw. So there's not always credence to that. Like, Raw does, you know, accidentally themselves into a good thing every now and then, but yeah. It just would have looked like we were scraping people off. I mean, if you look back in the day at who the key members of SmackDown have been, though, you think about guys like Jeff Hardy, The Undertaker, Edge, JBL, for better or for worse, Batista. Even though the company never presented them as an even keel, a lot of people found their favorites on SmackDown, but you had to let SmackDown grow as a show, as a thing that exists before you say, okay, here's your guys, now go be on an island. I don't think it would have worked. I get it. You could have done a story where, like, hey, this new show's starting, we don't like what's going on Raw, we're going to go make this show new, but that would have had to be talent-driven, and the draft wasn't talent-driven. It was the higher-ups saying, okay, some of you are over here now. I don't think it would have worked at all. Create an unstoppable Survivor Series team. 5 participants, and each member has to be accompanied by the era in which they fought. Okay, so Shawn Michaels around the original formation of DX. CM Punk around the initial CM Punk around the initial formation of the Straight Edge Society. Broken Hardys, and I don't know, Ricochet around the time of the ladder match for the North American Championship. So you got Shawn Michaels, CM Punk, Hardys, Ricochet. That's just off the top of my head. Thoughts on Eugene? Eugene's a fun one because it's not a character that they would do today, because far too many people would be offended, because people are experts at being offended in 2018. You took a very, very controversial subject matter, you know, somebody with some mental deficiencies. I'm not 100% sure what the correct term for Eugene would have been. But you made the character endearing, you made the character likable, you made the character a sympathetic character, and he beyond the character, he was still able to go in there and, you know, JR always referred to him as a wrestling savant because he would pull out, you know, the rock bottom or the pedigree or the stunner or something like that. But he was, Nick Dinsmore, the guy that played Eugene, was really, really good in the ring. The unfortunate thing about this is, as we know, you go on through life and, you know, people get character changes and whatever. That is the type of character that is going to stick with you, regardless of, you know, what you try to be from here on in. You know, Bray Wyatt trying to be Bray Wyatt in the beginning was dogged by Husky Harris chants. Now, I don't know what Nick Dinsmore is doing these days, or I don't know if he's even still wrestling. I don't think he'd ever be able to escape that character, so I think he'd have to play that character wherever he went now, because that's where his popularity came from. So it's kind of dangerous in that regard. It's not really a character that's going to get you a championship of any kind. I mean, I think him and Regal were tag team champions at one point, weren't they? But that's about it. The Rock did not receive any financial compensation for the WWE's use of SmackDown, even though the term was coined by him in the first place. Do you think he should have? Maybe, but call it a hunch. I think The Rock is doing okay. At WrestleMania 4, there was a one-night tournament to crown a new WWE champion. Do you want to see WrestleMania do anything like this in the modern day? No. Absolutely not. WrestleMania is supposed to be the biggest show of the year. You're supposed to have this fantastic, bombastic card, and say it was a 16-man tournament. All the matches are going to be short. We saw that at Crown Jewel, where, you know, Shane McMahon unequivocally, unquestionably became the greatest wrestler in the world. The problem with that is you can only really announce the first round matches, and so you're asking people to buy the biggest pay-per-view of the year, where you're only able to concretely give them about a quarter of the match card, and that doesn't work as a pay-per-view. I think it's one of the reasons why people are split on bringing King of the Ring back. Now, King of the Ring, you do throughout the weeks, and then you maybe have the semifinal and the final at the show. So you've got the semifinal, which is 2 matches that you can advertise, and maybe one match that's sort of a non-factor or an unknown entity, and then you advertise the rest of your card. This is what we're doing with our tag teams. This is what we're doing with our main championship. This is what our women's division is doing. I don't think you can do the one-night tournament, because I don't think people are willing at this point to give the time to something that is so up in the air. Now, there are people out there that really, really want the King of the Ring to come back, and I wouldn't mind either. I've said a million times, the way the Rumble leads to Mania, I think the King of the Ring could lead to SummerSlam. But I think you're going to divide the crowd if you do that. Which did you prefer, 3 Royal Rumbles in 2018 or 3 Money in the Bank matches in 2010? I'm going to say the 3 Royal Rumbles, only because the year that we had the 3 Money in the Bank matches pinpointed the year that Money in the Bank stopped happening at WrestleMania, which I don't think should have ever happened. I don't think Money in the Bank ever needed to be its own pay-per-view. Money in the Bank was one thing for several years that we could definitely look forward to at WrestleMania that was different from everything else on the card, and WrestleMania needs that diversity. You don't need to water it down by having 2 or 3 or 4 or whatever. We went into Money in the Bank this year, and we were like, okay, there's men's Money in the Bank, female Money in the Bank. We were all scared. We were all petrified at the concept of potentially having 4 Money in the Bank matches in one show. You water it down, you put it on, you make it the gimmick of the pay-per-view, and then that's all you focus on. The year that we had the 3 Money in the Bank matches was the year that Money in the Bank, we were told unequivocally, doesn't matter as much as it used to. We took it off WrestleMania and put it on a shelf over here. It's why when people say, oh, we need to take the women's division and give them their own show, I say no, because all you're doing at that point is you're pulling the women off of the big show and putting them on a shelf somewhere, which doesn't always work. The 3 Royal Rumbles, on the other hand, I'm a fan of. I'm not a fan of the fact that we got 3, but if you look at how we got to getting 3, I mean, the one in Saudi Arabia just doesn't count. Does it? Let's be real for a second. The big ugly looking pea green belt that Braun Strowman won at that event has never been seen again. Now, mind you, the other 2 are because at the Royal Rumble proper, the ladies got to have their first ever full bore ladies Royal Rumble match, which was fucking fantastic. Won by Asuka, great moment for her. kind of overshadowed by Ronda Rousey. Fair. Kind of sucks that the first ever Women's Royal Rumble winner, went to WrestleMania and lost. Fair. But still a huge historical thing for the women's division. So I don't mind that. Whereas whereas I have every reason to accept the 3 Royal Rumbles, I have every reason to hate the 3 Money in the Bank matches. Now, going forward, are we going to have 2 Royal Rumbles every year? Probably. That doesn't hurt my feelings at all. It really doesn't. I doubt we're going to do the Saudi Arabia Rumble again. If we do, that'll be a bit much. But as you say, take the Australia show, take the 2 Saudi Arabia shows, take the show, what was it, a couple years, Beast in the East in Japan. Take the WWE UK tournament shows. Those shows kind of exist in a bubble on their own. So I don't look at it as we got 3 Rumbles. I look at it as we got this gigantic international house show and they decided to have a Rumble on it. So there's my answer for that. Do you miss the championship scramble match? I do like it as a concept. I really do, except it runs the same problem as a last man standing match, and it runs the same problem as an elimination chamber, and I'll try to get to that as much as we can. It runs the same problem as an elimination chamber because you can only have so much story. You have a title match between 2 people, there's obviously a story between those 2 people. If you're going to have an elimination chamber match, you have to craft a story that involves 6 people because it's a definite 6-person match. Same thing with the Scramble. The Scramble has 5 people, so you definitely have to craft a 5-person story, which isn't always great if you go back and look at the history of it. But also, it's the championship scramble is sort of a game of hot potato. It's like who has the title at the end. So the end of the match isn't somebody conclusively winning. The end of the match is just, you know, the person standing. Very much like a last man standing match. There's no moment of submission. There's no moment of pin. There's just somebody knocking down, and the element that wins the match is the referee counting them out. The element of the match that wins in a scramble is that clock counting down. It's very, very anticlimactic. But in the same way, if you ignore the way the match ends, the rest of the match leaves itself open for a lot of fun stuff to happen and a lot of storytelling to happen within the match. Kind of it opens up the opportunities because, you know, any person that comes along, any feud could come out of those 5. Those 5 could have these 2 go and feud, these 2 go and feud, and the winner have a brand new challenger. It has the Royal Rumble element where you can have one winner, but you can have 25 different stories spawn out of the Royal Rumble. So it has its flaws. Where'd we go? Totally lost my place. Championship Scramble match totally does have its flaws, but it has the potential for some cool stuff to happen. It's like anything else. You can have a shitty Hell in the Cell match, you know, Undertaker and Big Boss Man and him getting hung from the cage, or you can have an amazing one like Shawn Michaels and Undertaker. It's very much who you put in it. It's very much how you craft around that anticlimactic ending. I wouldn't mind it coming back. I don't want it to be the focal point of a pay-per-view, but if they decide they're going to have a scramble match on Raw, I'll probably watch. Do you believe that WWE has ever considered Ted Turner for the Hall of Fame? Weirdly enough, yes. Because some of the best stuff we got was because of WWE's competition with WCW. Ted Turner obviously spearheading that along with Eric Bischoff and some other people. Not for anything that they did being good, but for their existence prompting WWE to be better. Yeah, sure, they could throw him in if they want. What would his induction look like? Who would induct him? I would laugh my ass off if Vince McMahon came out and inducted Ted Turner. That would be the best thing in the world. I heard this question on Solo Monsters Mailbag, and I would love to get your perspective. Which show is more defining to Chicago's legacy as a wrestling city? All In or Money in the Bank 2011? Well, Money in the Bank 2011 didn't have a bunch of jabronis dressed up in inflatable penis suits. That's not my real answer. All In was a cultural thing that happened within wrestling, and it happened to happen in Chicago. I don't think, unless somebody can clue me in, I don't think that there is a city significance to anything that happened on that show. Money in the Bank 2011, I'm going to be very biased here. You guys know I've had my issues with John Cena, but John Cena CM Punk was the quintessential modern day wrestling feud, being us versus the WWE. I mean, us as the fans, us as the universe, versus the WWE. We had our guy in CM Punk, they had their guy in John Cena, and that seeped through the entire rivalry. Now that, combined with the fact that we were in CM Punk's hometown, combined with everything that was crafted around that, and the realness that came with that. Yes, it's kayfabe, whatever, but the realness that the fans were able to feel at that particular point, everything between this and the pipe bomb, and I know CM Punk has said in recent interviews that he hates the term pipe bomb now because we as fans all overuse it, but I mean, it is what it is. He created it, so it's now a thing. The pipe bomb and this night are two of my favorite nights in my fandom of CM Punk, as I'm sure is the same for most people. That changed how I looked at wrestling a little bit, because I think it's one of the first times, and I mean, they tried to copy it with Daniel Bryan at WrestleMania 30 a couple years later, but WWE allowed us to think that we were fighting them, and that was a really, really cool thing. And with it being the hometown, and with the significance of it being Chicago because CM Punk is from there, was great. Now, All In did something completely different for wrestling, set a stage for indie wrestlers, doing the whole, like, hey, you can survive outside WWE, which is still, it's still laughable that people, like, look at me, I'm not in WWE. Cody Rhodes, I'm looking at you. Jericho, I'm looking at you. But All In, even me not being an indie fan, I watched All In. It was fun. I mean, the whole Joey Ryan penis druids thing notwithstanding, I liked Marty Scurll versus what big tall fucker that he faced, the Rainmaker Jones there. I liked it. It was a good show, and it proved that not only you can be not in WWE and put on something like this, but you can not be in any company realistically and do this. I mean, there was an element there of a lot of companies coming together. I know that the ROH title was defended there. I know that the NWA title was defended there. A lot of other companies were represented, so it was kind of like a United Nations of we're not WWE. And now we get the news and rumors that they're going to start, what is it, like All In Wrestling or some bullshit. That could be a thing. And that was sort of a watershed moment for indie wrestling fans. And I'm really happy for them. As much as I laugh at it, please don't get me wrong. If you're an indie wrestling fan, I am happy for you guys to have that moment like that. I don't know what the significance of it being in Chicago is. So as awesome as it is as a moment, I don't know whether it's a defining moment for Chicago as a city, other than the fact that that's where it happened to happen. I think it was at the Sears Center. I'm going to lean towards Money in the Bank, and I'm probably really, really biased in that. But that's not to take anything away from All In and what they achieved there. Shawn Michaels recently stated that WWE contacted him for a match with The Undertaker at WrestleMania 30. He quickly turned it down. Would you have wanted to see this over the Lesnar-Undertaker match? Well, yeah, because then Lesnar wouldn't have broken the streak. But, I mean, we're seeing Taker and Michaels and their friends now, and it's... anybody that saw Crown Jewel, as the guys on What Culture refer to it as the biggest banter pay-per-view that there's ever been, and it really was. Shane McMahon winning the World Cup, Baron Corbin costing Braun Strowman the title. The whole show started off with Hulk Hogan, which just made me cackle because I'm that kind of terrible person. Taker, Michaels, Triple H, Kane wasn't even the worst thing that happened on that show, but it was still pretty damn bad. I don't know. Lesnar beating the streak is a really controversial thing that I think a lot of people want to take back. But Shawn Michaels, Taker 3, I don't want. I want my co-host Kristen said, you know, it's just sad now, and I don't want to be sad. I don't think either is a particularly good example, or a particularly good option. Brock Lesnar's original WrestleMania 33 opponent was stated to be Shane McMahon, but it was later changed at the last minute because Goldberg agreed to do some stuff with the WWE in 2016. How would you have booked Shane McMahon versus Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania 33? I would have had Brock Lesnar... What the fuck did he do? Oh yeah, he won the Universal title back. I would have had his Universal title win at the pay-per-view before, and I would have run a story where he was blackmailing Vince McMahon for more money. He says, give me more money or I'm going to go to UFC and take your belt with me. Now, the fans would have laughed at that because the Universal title, the Fruit Roll-Up Championship, is fucking useless anyway. But in story, it's the main title on the main show, so it should be the most prestigious. It's not. It's a piece of trash. I would have had a very, very simple storyline where they kind of do what they did with Brock when they were trying to get you to support Roman, where they just played him off as the wrestler that doesn't care about wrestling. You know, I'm too big for the WWE, and I would have had him blackmailing Vince McMahon for more money, and Shane McMahon would have been like, okay, cool, I'm going to face you at WrestleMania, and if you win, you get all this stuff you're blackmailing my dad for, and if I win, you have to surrender the Universal title, and we'll have a tournament among all these other wrestlers that actually want to be here. Shane McMahon versus Brock Lesnar would have been terrible. I'm glad we didn't get that. I mean, the Goldberg thing wasn't much better, but, you know, him in there with his kid with no shirt on, which was awkward. It would have been a shit show. It would have been as bad as the Taker Shane match, which was just terrible. Who deserved a longer title run in 2011? Christian, who had it for 5 days, or Rey Mysterio, who held it for less than a day? I think Rey Mysterio immediately dropped it to John Cena, and then John Cena went and fought. Then John Cena went and fought Punk to see who the real champion was. They did that bullshit tournament. Rey Mysterio as a heavyweight champion makes me laugh. You guys know that. Christian, on the other hand, picked up the World Heavyweight Championship on the emotional back of Edge having to retire. That should have been something special. That should have been something that lasted. I don't give TNA very much credit these days, but you will see me giving them a lot of credit, where when they picked up Christian Cage after he left WWE, they made him on par with their main event scene, with their Kurt Angles and their AJ Styleses, and WWE, even in the second time around, was never able to achieve that, because if he's in WWE, he's in Edge's shadow. That should have been something special, and it wasn't. Rey Mysterio as WWE champion can fuck off. So it was Christian, in my opinion. Do you believe that the current version of the brand split will survive the Fox SmackDown programming merger? Do you think there will be pressure to have people like Roman Reigns on both shows? No, if I had my way, I would have Fox and USA fighting for equal stardom on both shows. You can keep the brand split. Because the logistics of eliminating the brand split again, amalgamating the titles again, is just going to make it a bit comical. But what you're forced to do in that case is present the stars on both shows as stars. Andrade Cien Almas was fighting the WWE Andrade Cien Almas had a match with the WWE champion AJ Styles on SmackDown. Now, you look at somebody like Braun Strowman, who has had title opportunities on Raw. But so they've both had shots at their respective champions, but Andrade Cien Almas is in no way presented as the same star as Braun Strowman is. That is the struggle that they have. Keep the brands exactly how they are, and have the respective writers on the respective shows fight and work and slave and do whatever they need to do to make you believe that both of those shows have stars. Don't just amalgamate everything, because then all the people that we want to see will be overshadowed by all of the Braun Strowmans and Brock Lesnar's and Roman Reigns and Roddy Rah. Dissolving the brand split is such a cheap way out, in my opinion, at this particular point. When you don't have two brands anymore. Realistically, what do you have? You have Raw, you have SmackDown, you have 205 Live, which has sort of separated itself from Raw. You've got NXT, you've got NXT UK, and then you've got anything else they do throughout the year, like the Cruiserweight Classic or the Mae Young Classic, or if they do another UK tournament. So there is a brand split in WWE, and it's more than just two brands. So I think dissolving, if you want to try and put Raw, SmackDown, NXT, NXT UK, and 205 Live all on one roster, nobody's going to get enough time. So they have to do it another way. You have to present it that champion Daniel Bryan is the equal to champion Brock Lesnar. You have to put it at, champions The Bar are on equal footing with champions AOP, or the Authors of Pain, or the Authors of Piss, because Drake Maverick pissed himself on pay-per-view. Never forget. Ric Flair's in-ring retirement at WrestleMania 24 was an idea that Ric Flair himself disagreed with, considering he had zero plans to retire. With that said, does Ric Flair receive too much criticism in wrestling for wrestling in TNA after his WrestleMania 24 retirement match with Shawn Michaels? if he didn't want to retire, then he didn't go back on his word, really. If they wrote him a retirement, then that's kind of bullshit. I don't know the backstory on that as much as I should to answer a question like this, but I mean, everybody comes back. I mean, Shawn Michaels right now came back, and everybody's like, oh my god, how could he go back on his word? How can he sell his soul for all that dirty oil money? Whereas, if he was coming back for a WrestleMania match, nobody would say that nearly as much. So I think it's a lot of it is the context as well. I think if Ric Flair spoke to WWE, said he had a couple more matches in him, came back and had those couple more matches in limited quantity, in certain contexts, etc., it would have been fine. I think the negative opinion that people have of TNA has a big part to do with the criticism that he receives for that. It's just bad. I think a lot of people, more than, oh, you said you were retiring and you didn't retire, I think a lot of people are saying, hey, you went from wrestling Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania to, oh dear God, being in the corner in TNA while Hulk Hogan fought Sting with his busted back and he couldn't take a bump. I think there's a lot of disappointment that a lot of people misdirected as anger, and I don't think it makes any sense at all. Lost my place again, sorry guys. This is riveting video as you watch me scroll down my screen here, right? Are there any tag teams that have been kept together too long? A lot of people will say Bobby Roode and Chad Gable, but I think that's again because fans want to think that they're smarter than the company. They looked at that team and immediately thought, "Yep, that's what they're going to do. They're going to be a tag team for a couple weeks, and then Chad Gable's going to do something dumb. Bobby Roode's going to turn. We're going to get heel Bobby Roode as a champion." That could very well be what they thought. Apparently it's not at this point. They were the captains of the irrelevant 10-on-10 team thing at Survivor Series. Other than that, I don't know. They don't keep teams together very much. I would have liked them, honestly, to keep DIY together longer than they did, but they might come back together as a heel team, which would be really awesome. Rank the following from worst to best. Edge versus Undertaker, Batista versus Undertaker, Randy Orton versus Undertaker. Edge is the best, Orton's in the middle, Batista's on the bottom, and that's just because the match between Edge and Undertaker at WrestleMania 24. If you can find the interview, I think it was either on The Score, it was on Sportsnet, something like that. There's an interview with referee Jimmy Corderas talking about how much the Edge Undertaker match meant to WWE and him being part of it, how much that meant to him. It says more than I will ever be able to say. I just think Edge was at his peak. Undertaker was keenly in that era of, okay, it's WrestleMania and I have to win because the streak is a thing, so I have to make people look as good as they can on the way. It's just great. Because you got that long stretch of great matches where you had Edge, then you had Shawn, then you had Shawn, then you had Triple H, then you had Triple H, then you had CM Punk. And that whole stretch was like, and are there flaws in all those matches? Probably. If I go back and look at them, I'm going off the top of my head here. But all those matches are great. The Shawn Michaels matches told a story. The Triple H matches told a story. Edge was this awesome prick on the ascent. And, you know, Undertaker is that last great speed bump if you are on that ascent to greatness. CM Punk, the whole CM Punk thing with the urn right after Paul Bearer died and bathing in the ashes and all the story that went into that, and CM Punk coming out in the gray and purple sort of tribute gear, it was all so fucking great. And then, you know, after that we had Lesnar, and then life just got sad. What would you rather listen to? What would you rather listen to? My hour-long Brie Mode Spotify playlist, or have Vicky Guerrero recite Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech through a megaphone? Zohan, there is so much problematic shit in that statement. I'm sorry, I cannot answer that question. Damn. Which Matt Hardy world title reign was more important to his legacy? ECW title reign in 2008 or his his TNA heavyweight title reign in 2016? I wasn't watching TNA at the time, but I am going to say his TNA run because I believe that's about the time that he started doing the Broken Matt stuff. The ECW title reign doesn't really matter because it wasn't really ECW. It was Vince McMahon's bastardized mockery of ECW. So it's just bad. China left WWE in 2001, later citing creative differences as well as backstage heat with Triple H and others. If she had stuck around in the early 2000s, what would you have liked to see her do, regardless of the brand split and what happened the following year? Vince Russo has since stated that WWE seriously considered putting the WWE title on China in 1999. If she had stuck around for the brand split, do you believe that would have been the case and the same idea? In a brand split era where there's more than one world title, I could see them potentially having or testing the waters with a female world champion. If anybody could have done it, it would have been China. China was so far apart from the women's division by that point. She had already been in hardcore matches and co-held the Intercontinental Championship with Chris Jericho, which was another big mess. I could see them doing it as long as they had another champion. If they had one singular undisputed champion. Why are we dinging? Why is this a thing? Why? This is why we can't have nice things. If there is if there is a single unified undisputed championship, there's no way they're going to play around with that. There really just isn't, which is sad, but I mean it is what it is. Which faction reboot was worse, the NWO? Sorry, which WWE faction reboot was worse, NWO in 2002 or D-Generation X in 2006 and 2009? D-Generation X at this point doesn't need to reunite; they just show up sometimes. NWO was a failure on its face, because it was WWE trying to recreate somebody else's work. So DX being a WWE creation, being in, to be corny for a second, being in the blood of WWE, always kind of existed. It was just whenever they showed up. DX these days is just Triple H and Shawn Michaels, which is what it was when it started. Let's be real. When DX started, it was Triple H, Shawn Michaels, Rick Rude, who's no longer with us, unfortunately, as well as Chyna, who's no longer with us, unfortunately. So what we have now is the genesis of D-Generation X. I mean, we went through all of those stages where we had X-Pac, we had Road Dogg, we had Billy Gunn, we had Kane in DX for a little while, we had Hornswoggle and Mike Tyson and Tori, and a bunch of other things. But go back to the original genesis of DX, it was these two guys. So the two bald guys, the two Mr. Cleans that we saw at Crown Jewel are actually the initial DX, so I don't mind it. Trying to create the NWO, and again, this goes with my ECW statement. I really do think they fucked up the NWO something rotten, because they knew the NWO was a large part of why WCW was able to compete with them for so long. So there's a little bit of vindictiveness on that, and throwing Shawn Michaels and the Big Show into NWO and Booker T and X-Pac, and it was just bad. It was just bad all the way around. Thanks so much for all the awesome content. Happy holidays and enjoy Survivor Series from Zohan. Zohan, buddy, you're awesome. I can always count on you to bring up some great questions for the Q&A. I know there's one or two that I haven't answered as well as I would like to, but I do appreciate your participation nonetheless. Ms. Arc 10, who I'm pretty sure has destroyed the pay-per-view pick'em for the year with his score of 8. Says, in case this needs to be oh yeah, by the way, I had to repost the last Q&A because apparently YouTube took it down for reasons. So he says, in case this needs to be re-added, how awesome is Hailstorm's new album? Hailstorm's new album is great. I love the new relationship that Hailstorm and Lizzie Hale have with WWE. The fact that she was singing she sang Ember Moon to the Ring. She was there for Evolution. The fact that their song Vicious, which is great, was used as the theme song for the Mae Young Classic this year, was a lot of fun. They're a great band overall. I need to go and really have a think about which, pick and choosing the songs that I like from the new album, because I'm still, even at this stage, even though I've had it sitting on my shelf for a little bit now, I haven't given it a good hard listen as well as I would like to. Hailstorm in general is great. Lizzie Hale is a fucking goddess as far as I'm concerned. It's really good. Hailstorm, I hope they do a lot more business with WWE. And on a selfish side note, I really do hope they come back to Toronto at some point so I can see them. Wouldn't it be awesome if Hailstorm was performing at SummerSlam next year when SummerSlam happens in Toronto? That's right. SummerSlam weekend comes to me next year. It's going to be a good time. Anyways, to all you guys, to Mizark 10, to the Zohan, to the one that I still don't know if I'm pronouncing it properly, Kolabali crew, thank you to you guys for participating in all this. Anybody watching, throw it down in the box below if you want to be involved in the next one. It's going to be happening in January, sometime around the Royal Rumble. Hope you guys have enjoyed this. I've been Spaz, your YWC reality check. Subscribe up there, talk down there, start a conversation. Keep all these conversations going. Don't be a stranger. I will talk to each and every last one of you later, but for right now, I am tagging out. Bye, guys.
You're a freak like me.
What's going on, everybody? It's your buddy, it's your pal Spaz Phoenix, the YWC reality check, and the weekend is here this coming Sunday. Destiny Wrestling presents Fearless on Fight TV as their first ever pay-per-view. I've been talking about it for a long time now. I've been putting tags at the end of my videos, most of them as we've gotten announcements. I've been putting out little solo videos whenever we get updates and such. Here is the massive collection of information that I have for you guys. It's probably going to be the last time I talk about this since it's happening this coming Sunday. But here it is. It is, like I say, broadcasting on the Fight TV app. If you don't have the Fight TV app, obviously go and get the Fight TV app. It's broadcasting live this coming Sunday the 25th from the Don Kolov Arena in Mississauga, Ontario. And the card is as follows. The whole show is being hosted by the absolutely gorgeous Alisa Atu. And I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. As far as the actual card goes, the TNA tag team, the Desi Hit Squad, are taking on Shelton Jean and Justin Sane, who I'm not very familiar with, I'm not going to lie, but Desi Hit Squad should be a good time. Teddy Hart's taking on Channing Decker. The debuting Shotzi Blackheart is coming in to face Silesia Sparks. Debuting Sammy Guevara is taking on the rising star from Destiny, Aiden Prince. TNA's Robbie E is taking on the absolute legend Stone Rockwell, which is going to be fucking fantastic. If you don't know Stone Rockwell, I can't properly describe to you how fucking great Stone Rockwell is. Just watching Robbie E, somebody that I always liked in TNA. Haven't seen in a while because I don't really watch TNA anymore. But that's a thing. With the absence of Pete Dunne, the Destiny champion, we have the interim Destiny champion, Josh Alexander, defending his title for the first time in a triple threat match against Rich Swann and Ray Phoenix. This is going to be a hell of a show. I'm going to be front row, and as I've been saying sort of jokingly, tune in to Fight TV this coming Sunday. If nothing else, you're going to see my goofy ass in the front row, but I honestly do believe if you guys have never seen Destiny Wrestling before, if you're not from the area, don't have the chance to see Destiny Wrestling, please check them out on pay-per-view. It's going to be a lot of fun. Hopefully I'll see you there. Tell them Spaz sent you, and I will talk to you guys later. Bye.